This is the Board of County Commissioners Board meeting, Palm Beach County. It's July 12th. It's 9:30, and I'm looking for a roll call, please.
Commissioner Bernard.
Here.
Commissioner Kerner.
Here.
Commissioner Marino. Commissioner McKinley.
Here.
Commissioner Sacks. Here. Mayor Weinroth.
Here.
Vice Mayor Weiss.
Here.
Commissioner Bernard, would you please do the invocation, Pledge of Allegiance? Everybody please stand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we begin our business at hand, let us give voice to our sincere gratitude to the divine for allowing us to reach this day with the abundant blessing that our great community has been bestowed. Let us pray that with sacred guidance from the Almighty for our decision-making, we may continue to work for the betterment of all. Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner Marino. I'm Commissioner Bernard. I am just, one step ahead of myself. Commissioner Marino is not available yet, but we are anticipating she's going to join us later on. She's unavailable to be here personally, but she would like to participate by virtual. I would like a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion by Commissioner Kerner, seconded by the Vice Mayor. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, that's by 6-0. When Commissioner Marino appears, we will then incorporate her into the meeting. All right. Madam Administrator, do we have any additions, deletions, or substitutions to our agenda?
Yes, Mayor, members of the board. On page 78, 4C, there will be an add-on or certificate of recognition, District 7. Page 44, 3H2 has been moved to regular agenda. It is now 6B5. Items on page 76 and 77, 3HH3, 4, and 5 have been deleted for further staff review. On page 93, 6D4 has been deleted for further staff review. On page 94, there is a revised summary on 6D5, which reflects 50 years restriction as opposed to 30. Page 99, 6H1, there's language in the motion as well as the summary that clarifies these are GO bonds. Page 99, 6H2, an add-on, and that's a motion to approve a mediated settlement. That concludes the add and delete sheet.
Thank you very much. Vice Mayor, you're recognized.
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to, on the consent agenda, I would like to pull item 3CC1.
Okay, I have a motion to remove 3CC1, and you're going to give us a recusal on that? When we get there. Okay, very good. All right, so I have the consent agenda in front of us now. Do we have any cards on the consent agenda?
I think we need a motion to approve the agenda first, so moved.
I guess we do. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Bernard, how come you're not there to help me? All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Kerner, seconded by the Vice Mayor. All in favor of the agenda as amended, all closed. We show that as approved, 6-0. All right, now, let's move on. We're going to, do we have any cards? No cards. Anybody else want to pull anything else from the consent agenda? You're looking at me with a quizzical look, County Administrator. No. Oh, okay. Oh, look at that. We have a friend in the audience. Okay.
Motion to approve the consent agenda minus 3CC1, Mayor.
Very good. I have a motion to approve minus 3CC1. I have the Vice Mayor seconding. All in favor? All opposed? Show that as approved, 6-0. We'll now move on to item 3CC1. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. On advice of council, I've been advised to recuse myself on item 333CC1 as my wife serves on the board of Speak Up for Kids. So, and
Very
I
good.
filed my paperwork with the clerk.
Thank you, and for the audience's information, this is a disbursement being made by the sheriff to several organizations out of their Law Enforcement Trust Fund. Do I have a motion to approve 3CC1?
So moved.
I have a motion by Commissioner McKinley, seconded by Commissioner Sacks. All in favor, all opposed, show that as approved 5-0 with one recusal. Okay, that takes care of our consent agenda, and I'm now going to look forward to our presentations. Commissioner Bernard, you're up.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if the representative for the 11th Annual Kids Fest Jamathon is here. So if they're not here, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to use it
You want to defer on that?
as an I'll do it as an off-site proclamation.
Very good.
Thank you. Would Emmanuel Jackson please come forward, and the students from EJS please come forward? Mr. Mayor, before I present this certificate of recognition, I want to present some of the students who are here from, most of them are from Delray Beach and West Palm Beach, and one from Boynton Beach. I had the opportunity to speak to them this morning, and some of them are going on a college tour to FIU, and so we want to recognize them for being here. We wish them, good luck in their tour at FIU today. And so it is truly, truly an honor to present this certificate of recognition to Emmanuel Dupree Jackson, who founded the EJS organization in 2014 in honor of his father. Mr. Jackson, you have done an amazing job working with our youth in Delray Beach and throughout Palm Beach County. And so as today we're going to present you the certificate of appreciation, which is presented to you, Mr. Emmanuel Jackson, with your senior project, Inc., in honor of the many years of dedicated service and commitment to the youth of Palm Beach County. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. For those of you who don't know, my name is Dupree Jackson. I am the founding director of the EJS Project. The EJS Project is a community-based organization. We provide a safe space for teens throughout Palm Beach County who deserve access to resources and opportunities. We do this to overcome systemic disadvantages so that our youth and their families are able to realize their dreams, improve their quality of life, and reach their greatest potential. So I do want to say thank you. I'll be brief, but we don't take it lightly, the time that you invested, the time that you make to host our kids, answer questions in an intimate setting where it's just them so they could be them unique selves. And it's vital for them to meet people like you throughout our Young Legislative program, because for me, it reminds me, or it motivates me, because I know they're going to see a lot of themselves in you. And when they see you and hear about your story and your journey, they can see it within themselves. You have similar backgrounds to a lot of our students, and that's what we want. We want to spark something in each one of our students, which I think we already did. I do want to take this time publicly to thank each one of my students. As you all know, it's summertime. These are high schoolers, but they make the commitment all summer long. All of our programs, they show up with a smile. This morning, they beat me to the office at 7 a.m. With a long day, and they show up every Wednesday for tutoring to make sure those tests don't fall off. So When you're talking about being optimistic and being encouraged by our youth and what the future holds, I'm reminded every day when looking at these students. So thank you so much.
Okay, while they are doing their picture, I'm going to ask Eric Cole and your friends to come up. We have a rodent in the house. No, it's not a rodent. We won't trap him. Squirrel. Squirrel. I'm going to point out that this was actually a proclamation that was requested by Commissioner Marino, but because she's absent, I'm going to take the opportunity to present it today. So we are here today to declare July 2022 as Parks and Recreation Month. Whereas the county's Parks and Recreation Department was created in 1951 as a division of the County Engineer's Office. In 1972, a reorganization led to the separation of Parks and Engineering, and the Palm Beach County Parks and Recreation Department was formed. And whereas 2022 marks the 50th year of the Palm Beach County Parks and Recreation Department providing opportunities for healthy, happy living for county residents and visitors. And whereas Parks and Recreation services are vital for the communities throughout the country, including Palm Beach County. And whereas Parks and Recreation services promote health and wellness, improving the physical and mental health of citizens. And whereas Parks and Recreation programs and educational opportunities such as out-of-school activities, youth sports, swim instruction, and environmental education are critical to childhood development. And whereas Parks and Recreation services improve a community's economic prosperity through higher property values, expansion, we'll talk about that later, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas parks and open spaces are fundamental to the environmental well-being of a community and provide places for wildlife to thrive and for children and adults to connect and with nature and experience outdoor recreation. And whereas parks and recreation facilities that incorporate blue-green infrastructure help to create a more resilient community when faced with the effects of climate change and natural disasters. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and whereas Palm Beach County recognizes the benefits derived from the Parks and Recreation services and county's National Gold Medal award-winning Parks and Recreation Department team, now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners that this is the Parks and Recreation Month in Palm Beach County. Thank you. Eric, we are very, very proud of our parks, and we know that you are instrumental in bringing those parks to our residents, and we're very happy to have you today accept this and certainly listen to your words.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mayor and Commissioners, Administrator Baker. Thank you so much for your continued support of Parks and Recreation, not only today and this month, but all year long. The national theme this year is We Rise Up for Parks and Recreation. It's really a salute to park professionals around the country, but particularly here in Palm Beach County. I'd like to honor all those that work for us, and particularly the work that they've done over the last 2 years, evident of how important parks are here in Palm Beach County. With me today, obviously our Assistant County Administrator, Dorit Miller, Assistant Director, Jennifer Cirillo, our Administrative Assistant, Gladys Wiggum, Chris Korbalak, our Manager of Public Engagement, and Oakley, our mascot, the squirrel. We also, Oakley is very popular. And we always like to bring our interns. Davion Fisher-Brim is with our Planning section, and Kylie Folan is with our Recreation Services Division. This is a special Park and Recreation Month. As you heard, it's our 50th anniversary, and we have a couple of things going on. We have a 70s themed 5K race coming up later on in the year. We have a time capsule that we're working on that we'll be putting together here at John Prince Park. And we have a special bus wrap. We were fortunate to work with Palm Tran, and right out front is a special bus wrapped with some park images that we'd like for you to have your picture taken with us when you have a lunch break today. So thank you very much for your continued support. We appreciate it.
You're assuming we'll have a lunch break today.
While the mayor is taking the picture, I'll bring Mr. Will Romulus to please come forward. It is a pleasure to present this proclamation recognizing the 11th annual Kids Fest Gemathon. Whereas Kids Fit Gemathon, hosted by Digital Vibes, Inc., is an innovative, interactive, concert-like experience for youth that motivates and inspires them to dance, stay fit, and live healthy lives. And whereas in 2010, Digital Vibes, Inc. was founded to reach out to underserved youth in Palm Beach County by mentoring them through dance, fitness, technology, and the arts. And whereas at the Gemathon annual summer wellness fitness event, youth perform on stage with professional quality sound and lighting systems. And the winning dance program receives a cash prize. And whereas Digital Vibes, Inc. has developed partnerships with the local after-school programs, community-based organizations, and summer camp programs that serve thousands of children each year. And whereas Digital Vibes, Inc. has hosted events such as Let's Move PBC and programs such as wellness workshops and digital expressions where children can express themselves by producing music videos. And whereas Digital Vibes, Inc. offers one of the largest summer camp programs in Palm Beach County, has gained a national social media following, and provided the choreography and participated in the production of a viral dance TikTok video that had over 40 million views. And whereas we take special notice and acknowledge the exceptional services Digital Vibes, Inc., with its executive director, Will Romulus, has provided to the county's youth for more than 10 years. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Palm Beach County, Florida, assembled in regular session this 12th day of July 2022, that July 28, 2022 in Palm Beach County is hereby proclaimed the 11th annual Kids Fit Gemathon. Congratulations. Now, before he speaks, I need you to teach me how to keep my daughter off of TikTok. Go.
Oh, man. Palm Beach County, thank you. I mean, words cannot express our gratitude and how appreciative we are for the continued support that we have of our partners, especially Palm Beach County. The Kids Fit Gemathon is pretty much a really cool way to trick our kids to stay active, and we do that through the art of dance. So basically, once the kids are experienced with all those, they see all those lightings, all those phenomenal dancers, and all those great things that's happening. To them, it's like a big party, but when it's all said and done, it's a workout. So that's pretty much a way to get them up and moving and live a healthier and happy lives. So that's what that Gemathon is all about. And right now, to date, Palm Beach County is hosting the largest kids fitness concert by your own Digital Vibes, Kids Fit Gemathon. It's throughout the whole nation. It's the largest, and we are truly grateful for that. And the county have been supporting us with this phenomenal project that we call Digital Expressions, Lifetime of Consequences, with many partners such as Jim Moran Foundation, United Way of Palm Beach County, and all those great partners, pretty much to educate the youth about if you do this, this is how it may impact you the rest of your life, and so on and so forth. Because oftentimes our kids, they act on emotions. They have so much emotion built in, they don't know how to express their feelings, and when they do express it, they do it the wrong way. So our goal with Digital Vibes is providing them the positive outlet to express their feelings, and it's through dance, through writing, and also through technology and arts. So we're really appreciative of Palm Beach County for the continuous support and all of our partners. Prime Time of Palm Beach County, special shout out to you guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Mr. Mayor, I think the real question is Commissioner Bernard going to show us some of his new dance moves. I want to see.
All right, well, we got the fun stuff out of the way. Now we have to get to work. And we have a full agenda, and we have a lot of comment cards, so we're going to go through this nice and quietly and get everything accomplished that's in front of us, including discussion of millage, but that comes a little bit later. It's now time for public hearings, and I'm going to look for a motion to receive and file proof of publication. I have a motion by Commissioner Sacks, seconded by the Vice Mayor. All in favor, all opposed? Let's show that as approved, 5-0. 6-0, sorry. Okay, 6-0. All right, now it's time for 5A1. I have no comment cards on 5A1. I know we've all been briefed on the five-year road program. Does anybody need to have any clarification or presentation at this time? Seeing nobody looking for a presentation, I have a motion to approve. I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Sacks. I have a second by Commissioner McKinley. All in favor? I can't call her, if I do call him Commissioner Marino, then Commissioner Marino will be offended. Okay, all in favor, all opposed. That's a 6-0 for the approval of 5A1. You're dismissed, Mr. Ricks. All right, we're going to move on to 5B1. Commissioner McKinley, did you want to either move that or do you have any issues on it? Oh, wait a minute, I have a comment card on 5B1.
I think there's been some controversy. The brief staff presentation would be good.
All right, we'll have a brief presentation, then we'll take the comment from our resident. Mr. Bonlaren, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Just very quickly, joining me today is Mike Jones, Assistant County Attorney, Kristen Bernston, our Deputy Director of Water Utilities, and Ralph Estheim, who is our resident expert on these issues at Water Utilities and has been working on this particular project. So before you is an adoption of a resolution for a special assessment role for the 80th Lane North Water Main Extension Project. This is a project, and we do a number of these types of things in water utilities, but this was one that was brought to us by a resident of 80th Lane North, which is typically how these are initiated. We have a number of them that we do and some that we're doing in this particular region. And it also is calling for the work authorization with Johnson Davis Incorporated to commence the construction contract in this particular item. So this is one that went to the residents of the street. There are 12 residents that are along that particular corridor. 3 notices were sent to them in this process. We had 2 public hearings on this issue. Obviously, it was during the pandemic, so those were virtual meetings that were held. 8 of those residents were in favor of this particular item. 4 of those were non-responsive, which is not uncommon. I mean, we get a number of these where people do not respond to that in those events. I would point out, too, that the assessment on this in terms of the work that we're looking to do on this particular project is $17,773.81 on each parcel. That's over a 20-year period in addition to the interest rate that's set at Water Utilities that's charged on top of that. These are essentially, I would say, pre-pandemic prices that we've been able to secure on this particular contract for this project. So if it's something that we need to go back or we need to stop this process and initiate a new one, it will be significantly higher than I think what is before you today. Staff has already initiated the permit process on this, and we've gotten the required permits to do this work. We have initiated and we have done the design on this particular project. We've expended about $50,000 in water utilities in this project so far, and we do that upon getting that confirmation from the community that they're supportive in moving it forward. We have the documentation with us as well on the petitions that were sent out and voted on and were sent back to us in response to that particular request. So, Kristen, I don't know if you have any other issues that you want to add to that or items?
No, I think you've listened.
Okay.
Mr. Von Lehren, the only question I have is if we abort on this for some reason before we have a conversation about it, who would absorb that $50,000?
We would, at Water Utilities, absorb that. We can have some conversations with the county attorney's office on whether there's an opportunity to do that, but I think because, and I'll let Mike speak for this, because I think that there's a specific, reason why we can't recoup those dollars under these agreements.
Yeah, we could not assess any properties if we don't go forward with the process. We wouldn't be providing a benefit to those properties, so it wouldn't pass muster under assessment law.
Okay. And again, Mr. Von Lehren, it's your opinion that if we had to rebid this, that it would be substantially higher?
I believe it would, and I'll let Ralph and Kristen.
Yes, Mayor, it would be substantially higher because this is a 2020 contract under our continuing, so we're going to go out to bid here within the next few months, so the prices would absolutely be much higher than they are today.
Is there any possibility that these numbers are going to change because of the change in the supply chain and the contractor having the inability to fulfill?
Not right now because they're honoring their 2020 contract prices, so right now we believe that this would be the firm price that they would be paying, no
Very
more
good.
right now.
One thing we would note on that too, in terms of the pricing, when we sent out the initial correspondence to the residents, the actual price for the individual assessments was higher than what it is. We actually were able to get the price lower on what was initially sent to them, so it's actually less than what they initially thought when they voted that price would be, and potentially, depending on how the construction goes and contingencies that we have on this particular project, there's an opportunity that it might even be less than what it is, but this is the price per parcel that we have before you.
Very good. I don't see any further comments up here. Commissioner Kerner, can we have comments?
Thank you, Mayor. We have 4 public speaking cards on 5B1 in opposition. The first speaker will be Natalie Merritt, followed by Ms. Gonzalez.
Are you present? I'd ask you to identify yourself, and you will have 3 minutes to make your presentation.
Good morning. My name is Natalie Tant Merritt. I live at 15733 80th Lane, North Loxahatchee. 2 years ago, my neighbor came up to me about the public water, and I voted no from the beginning. And to make it short, last night I was notified by the letter that this is not my husband's signature. It's Hollinger. Never been notified, never had letters in the mail in the last 2 years. And we've been voting no since the beginning.
Can I ask a question? So the vote on record is 8 in favor, 0 opposed, and 4 did not respond. So we have no record of any official no votes. So either you responded yes or you did not respond at all, because there's nothing on record of a no vote. Can you explain that?
We never got anything in the mail. We were never notified.
You just said you voted no, so how did you vote no?
No, when my neighbor came up to me, Ed, I don't know his last name, and told us about this, we said no from the beginning.
Okay, you said no. So you were one of the 4 non-responsive?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm a little unclear. You said you have a signature that you said was not your husband's?
Yes.
On what document is that signature?
It says Palm Beach County Water Utilities. It's a petition, and this is not my husband's signature. And Brian Hollinger mailed this in.
So you're saying there was a petition circulated on your block, but the signature that is on there for your husband, you're saying is not his?
Yes, it's not his signature.
All right, I don't see any further questions unless, Commissioner?
Is it a petition that the neighborhood did, or, I mean, and let me look at staff. Is it a petition that they turn in, or is it individual letters that are signed?
There's
It's
individual
petition-
letters that are signed.
It's petition for the water mains for yes, and me and my husband been a no from the beginning.
Okay, so that was just a neighborhood petition that was turned in that started this process, but that's not one of the 8 in favor and the,
From Brian Hollinger.
okay. That's not an official document, that, whatever it was. The official document would have been one of those 12 letters that was sent out. That's the only thing that these decisions are based on, are the letters that are returned, signed either yes, no, or the ones that aren't returned.
Yeah, that's the one we've never received.
Okay. And
Thank you
there
for
were-
your comments.
Thank you. There were 3 notices that did go out, so.
And we've never received any of them.
Mr. Von Laren, can you clarify how those notices are sent?
Those notices are sent by regular mail. They go out. And maybe, Ralph, you want to go through the process of how each of those go out?
Morning, Commissioners, Vice Mayor, Mayor. So we send the letters using the property appraisers mailing database. So every property owner that's benefiting from this project will receive individual letters based on the mailing address that's on the property appraisers. And we do that for 3 months to try to see if they're interested in in the water project. Once we actually receive those letters, either a yes or no response, we record them and we keep them on file in the event that we have a public request.
Is there any record of any of those envelopes being returned, address the unknown, or?
No, sir.
Okay, very good.
And so when we do receive the undeliverables, we keep that on file as well.
Okay, so nothing was returned to the county for the 3 mailings you did on any of those, I guess, 12 items that were sent each time?
No, Mayor.
Very good, thank you.
And your decision is strictly based on the letters that are returned to you and not any type of citizen petition that may have circulated around in the neighborhood?
Correct. So once we send the letters and we get the responses in, we verify the signatures based on the property appraiser's website.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Kerner?
Thank you, Mayor. Our next speaker will be Ms. Gonzalez, followed by Jeff Vomero, and our final speaker will be Sharon Vomero.
Again, please identify yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Mel Gonzalez. I live on 15769 80th Lane North. Originally, I was for the whole plan. I saw some of those letters. I don't know if it was 3, but just stating I'm opposing it now.
You're changing your
vote. Yeah.
Your vote. Okay. To our county attorney, what is the effect of the resident now changing their mind? Does that have legal effect upon the letter that the county received?
I'll let Mike go for this one.
So the process that the department follows here is they make a determination at that point in time, the deadline for the petition. So that would have been some time ago, probably a year or more ago. So that's really the sort of the snapshot of the determination that they're following. We don't, if somebody makes a change after that, it's not going to affect, I guess, what the department is doing with that, because they have already started the process of spending money, doing design, permitting, and things of that nature. So the process under the policies and procedures manual is to make that determination at the point in time when the deadline for petitions is
Okay,
required.
but this body could take that into consideration when it now votes whether to approve or deny this item?
Yes, you could.
Absolutely.
Okay. I see no lights, so we'll go on to the next card. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Our next speaker will be Jeff Vomero and then Sharon Vomero.
Commissioners, how are you this morning? My name is Jeff Romero. I live at 15770 80th Lane North. In regards to this utility project, I was notified by one of the neighbors back in 2020. They asked me verbally if I would like to have city water. I advised them, no, I do not want city water. My well water is just fine. He then texted me and says, are you sure? I said, yes, I do not want it. So I heard nothing of it after that. I was just thinking everything was going to be just fine, and it was not. I looked outside my yard, I think it was 2020, and I saw some guy doing some sort of surveying on my swale. So when I went there, I said, who are you with? What are you doing here? He goes, I'm with the county. Well, okay. Are you working on my swale? What are you doing? He says, no, I'm just doing stuff from Indian Trail. I was like, all right, let me call Indian Trail. So I called Indian Trail in 2021, December, as a matter of fact. And I asked them what was going on. So they sent me the paperwork that the members of the block want to go along with some information about getting city water. She sent me the letter that was sent from Brian Hollinger, which was erroneous, believe it or not. He does not speak for me. He is not the block representation guy like he says he is. He's saying the water quality on our street is poor, there's stains, there's all sorts of stuff, and they're at wit's end. That is not true. The water guy who does my water system works on 4 homes on the block. There's nothing wrong with the well water. He just decided to take it upon himself to be the block representation, and that's not for me. So I contacted the county, and I said to them, do I have to pay for this? If I don't have to pay for it, I don't care what you do on my street, but I am not going to pay for the water. He says, no, you don't have to. I said, awesome. Nothing happened. I received no letters from anybody giving me an update of what is going on with the water until June 17th, when I received the final one saying you owe $18,000 that's going to assess you for 30 years at 5.5%, that's $1,575 a year. I then contacted Ralph, and he graciously took my call, and I spoke to him. He sent me all the correspondence, at least as many as I asked for. I think there was 3 letters sent out, one in January 21, one in February of 21, and then one in March of 21. I received none of those. Now, whether my vote is yay or nay, whatever it may be, I still should be getting something from the county saying we're moving forward on your street so I can contest it. As soon as I saw that, I was like, wait a minute, I got to fight this a little bit here. This is not right. I'm not going to be paying that much money on my block for water. I don't need it. My water's fine. If they want it, they can pay the $40,000, but I'm not doing that. I then said, okay, let me do some more research. I did a little bit more. I contacted the commissioner's office, and I got a phone call back saying they'll let me know sometime after July 4th or July 4th weekend about what the procedure is. I got a call the following week, and it was awesome. I got the information I needed. I then emailed Ralph again Monday.
Your time is up. I think we understand that
Yeah.
at this time you're not in favor of it.
Yeah.
Did Mr. Vomero ever return one of those 8 that you did receive?
No, he was a non-responsive.
He was a non-responsive. Okay. Commissioner Sachs, you're recognized.
Thank you. This is a question for the attorney. What is the legal requirement for moving county water into a neighborhood that already has well water?
It's a voluntary assessment process, essentially, or is an assessment process. So legally, for us to assess a property, we have to provide a special benefit to that property, and we have to reasonably apportion the cost. That's essentially the law in Florida. Our ordinance on this matter does not even require a petition process. We do utilize a petition process under our policies. And even under the policies, it allows for a waiver of the petition process as well. But we do follow that process to gauge the interest. But basically, the legal requirement for us to impose an assessment is special benefit and reasonable apportion.
So we need to, I want to understand the legal requirements for the county government to impose, first, county water, and second, most importantly, the money, the assessment. So let's say you have a neighborhood of 10 houses, and the county's interest is to put county water on all 10 houses, to run the county water line on all 10 houses. Does every house in that, quote, block have to consent to having county water, and not only county water, but also to be assessed a fee for having county water?
No, legally, they do not have to consent to allow us to legally assess the property. Now, they do not have to connect. That's a different situation. That is up to them whether they want to connect to the water or not, because there are connection fees and then obviously monthly
Sure.
fees that come after that. But the construction costs that are part of the assessment, we do assessments all the time. We very rarely have 100% approval on those assessment projects.
A little bit like streetlights or something that would benefit the value of the property and for the benefit of that block. However, so there's two issues here. One is there's going to be a fee, because we can do it anyways, whether
For the
10
construction
houses
project,
want it or not, we're
everybody
going to do
gets
it.
charged,
Right.
correct.
But there's two issues with regard to the cost. One cost is required and mandatory for every of these 10 houses, and that is that they have to pay for the county to bring in the water, but they don't have to pay the additional assessment to be hooked up to that main water line.
That is correct.
And have these folks been informed of that by the county? That
I would assume, I wasn't at the meeting, but Ralph can, I think,
Ralph,
attest.
is that true, that they have been informed that there's two costs? One, they have to pay to have the county water line there.
Yes,
But
Commissioner.
secondly, they don't have to pay to have it hooked up to their house.
It was all stated in the letters that were provided to all the property owners
It was
and at the public meeting.
Okay, so there were two things. One, we sent them a letter, not certified, but U.S. Post, right? And secondly, there was a meeting that everybody got notice of.
Correct. We had the initial informative meeting as well as a final meeting prior to this public hearing.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. And can you just tell me what the hookup cost would be?
Approximately about $5,000.
So we're saying, in addition to the $31,000, if they pay it over 20 years, an additional $5,000, does that get put into that 20-year payout, or is that paid in front?
There's options. They can either pay it up front or they can finance it.
And can they pay the $17,000 immediately instead of paying $31,000 over 20 years?
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner McKinley?
Yeah, just two questions. Number one, the county never goes in and initiates these. These are initiated by the residents, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then the second question is, what is the vote requirement? Is it a majority vote or is it a 2/3 vote?
Simple majority, 51%.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any more?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Sir.
Our final speaker will be Sharon Vomero.
Good morning. I'd like to start where we left off as far as the assessment. We also were informed that there would be a meter charge in addition to that, which also rises the cost. Again, we weren't privy to this information. I don't know why we didn't receive the letters. I don't know why we did not know about the meetings. We definitely, without a doubt, would have attended. We would not be here today and have waited to this point. So it's a little disheartening, and I'm sure it's very confusing for all of you as well. I do have to say, the signature, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this actually, but when Natalie was speaking about her husband, the signature is actually on the actual petition form sent by the county. It was not a neighborhood petition. That was way back done with ITID. when we talk about well-being and things that are going to enhance the community, from a personal standpoint, I don't understand why the law may state that it shouldn't be everyone in favor of. I don't have $17,000 or $18,000 to pay. I am a cancer patient right now. I am accruing a lot of medical bills. Our family does not have that. We have 2 children with disabilities. We simply do not have that money. We've been in our home 18 years, and we want to stay there. We have a perfectly working system that we've maintained all these years, and I am troubled by the fact that our opinion and our desire doesn't hold as much as someone else's when it comes to this level of money. We're not talking about $500. And, you know, for some people, that's a hardship in this day. This started in 2020. And we're sitting here 2 years later now. Granted, it hasn't begun, but I don't understand why, like my family personally, we are at this point where we never received anything, because we certainly would have spoken with people before. We've tried to do our due diligence over this last week and change when we got the information, but unfortunately we sit here now. But from a personal point of view, I'm very troubled by it. It's very stressful. It's given me personally a lot of anxiety. And I don't understand the benefit of public water versus what we already have. When you move to the acreage in Loxahatchee, you know you're going to be on well and septic, and you accept
Thank you.
that.
We understand your point, and we,
Okay.
again, appreciate you taking
Thank
the
you,
time to
sir.
come up today to tell us.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
All right, so Commissioner Sachs, you want to be recognized?
Thank you. I don't like to belabor this, but I'm going to ask staff, because actually it happened. I feel for people who are very happy with the water they have, and then all of a sudden, issue to me is really government doing an assessment on folks who didn't have notice, proper notice previously, and I'm looking at the attorney. But let me talk to the staff. Is there a way that we could send certified letters to folks? Because so many times the mail, either they didn't receive it or they weren't there, or somehow they didn't get, the idea of not getting notice before being assessed a fee, to me, is troubling. And maybe Todd, maybe you could, maybe can we do something so that
We can.
so that we're a government entity, and I just like to be sure that people have notice before we will assess a fee, regardless of whether they want county water or not.
Yeah, we certainly can procedurally, do additional things that can help, safeguard that notice, and we can certainly look at our procedures and change that to send those certified if we need to do that in the future. And we're certainly, obviously, open to that if it's going to be helpful in some of these deliberations and making these decisions as we go forward. So absolutely, we can do that.
I would appreciate that, because it's a lot of money.
Yep.
It's a lot of money. And there's something sort of in our Constitution about notice before the government imposes fees. So this is, and whether, today's world, today's budget issues, I think it would behoove us to really try our best to look at our procedures and possibly do a certified letter to folks that they're going to be assessed.
Well taken,
Thank
yes.
you, and I appreciate the folks coming out today.
Thank you, Commissioner Sachs. Commissioner McKinley?
Yeah, thank you. Todd or staff, are there any type of hardship, is there any hardship assistance available?
None that we're aware of for this type of situation. There may be possible grants that they could get low funding to pay it back, but it is, again, on the tax bill. So they'll have the 20 years to pay it back.
Okay. So, Mr. Mayor, I know you guys are putting the burden on me on this one since it's my district. I am going to take into consideration, when we started this agenda item today, the vote was 8 in favor, 0 opposed, 4 non-responsive. We sit here today, we now have 7 in favor, 2 opposed, and 3 non-responsive. The vote requirement is a simple majority to move these things along that are initiated by the residents. Even if I were to take those 3 non-responsive and count them as no, it would still be 7 in favor and 5 opposed, so simple majority. That's the way our rules are written, and I think that we don't change that process. And while I certainly feel for the residents who oppose this, those are the rules. So I'm really left with no choice but to move this item forward. I would like the record to reflect that we do have 7 in favor, 2 opposed, and 3 non-responsive as we sit here and vote on this today based on the testimony that we heard. So I'm going to go ahead and move approval of item 5B1, A, and B. Ask that staff from now on do certified mail for these types of incidences. And I do think that in the future we need to look for some sort of hardship, recognizing that there may be unique circumstances in some of these situations for some homeowners.
Thank you, Commissioner McKinley. Do I have a second? Not hearing a second, the motion fails. I'm going to recognize Commissioner Bernard now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to support this item. I think that we need to make sure that we do get this by certified mail to make sure that we get an accurate assessment of the situation. And so I'm not going to make a motion.
Commissioner Kerner.
Thank you, Mayor, and I certainly appreciate my colleague, Commissioner McKinley's perspective. I'm just a little bit uncomfortable at this point, given the opposition that has appeared today and made articulate arguments against this motion or against this agenda item. If I were to vote yes, I'd be relying simply upon the sort of informal petitions that went out, and they were a very long time ago, and I just hesitate as a government to force this upon a community where there's not specific evidence that a majority of the residents support it. So I'll be voting no. There's a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerner. I am struck by the testimony we received today. Obviously, $150 a month, give or take, is something that is impactful. We're going to be talking about millage in a little while, and we're talking about a number probably lower than that as far as an impact to people if we are able to tweak down the millage. So I would look for a motion to postpone, if I can get one, to allow this matter to be, again, reviewed. Obviously, we don't have anybody here who voted in favor of this before, not understanding that this could possibly be a contentious item. I'd like to give those residents an opportunity to voice and perhaps at another hearing come before us and allow this to be heard fully. I'm not prepared to support it today as far as approving it. Commissioner McKinley?
Yeah, I would just say that you still have 7 residents, a majority of the residents who were in favor of this, and according to the county rules, there really wasn't a reason for them to be here today. But I'll go ahead and move that we postpone this and ask staff to send those letters out one time. I don't want this a 3-month process again. One time, a certified letter since it's a small number of homes, to those 12 property owners.
Very good, Commissioner McKinley. So I have a motion to postpone, and Commissioner Kerner has given you a second. That would be to a date certain, and let's make it, when is our next meeting in September?
Mayor, if I could.
Yes, Commissioner Sachs.
I just want to make sure that it's, if I could, Commissioner McKinley, if it's certified mail return receipt requested, that way we know, if it's okay, Commissioner McKinley, that we know that they have received it, somebody has signed for it. And that way we get that feedback that they've received notice. Thank you, Commissioner McKinley.
All right, I don't think that has to be part of the motion. I think staff hears our direction on that. All right, again, yes, sir.
So it's a public hearing, so should it be a motion to continue to whatever the public hearing date is?
Can we have a date from you, Mr. Von Laren?
If we can postpone and continue, and if we want to look at September, we can do this on September the 13th. Administrator Baker, does that work?
Okay, September 13th works with the motion maker and with the seconder. All in favor, all opposed? That's been approved 6-0. Thank you very much, and we appreciate the residents who came out to give us your information. All right, we're going to move on now to 5C1, which I think will be a little less contentious. And we have Mr. Call. Do we need a presentation on this? We've already had one meeting on this back on May 17th, and I believe the League of Cities has opined on it. Mr. Radcliffe, would I be mistaken if I said that the League of Cities had no objection to this? Okay, I will, for the record, indicate that Mr. Radcliffe indicates that the League of Cities has no objection to this item. Anybody want to make a motion?
A motion to adopt the ordinance.
I have a motion by Commissioner Kerner, seconded by Commissioner Sacks, to approve 5C1. All in favor? All opposed? This item has been approved 6-0. Thank you, everybody. All right, we're going to move on now. We have item 5D1. Hold on a second. Commissioner Kerner?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to reorder the agenda regarding agenda item 6B2 to follow after 5D1.
I have a motion by Commissioner...
5A1, I apologize.
Yep. Commissioner Kerner has 5A1?
We already did 5A1.
Did. Yeah.
Madam Administrator. We already did 5A1.
All right, we're going to take that as soon as we're done with the public hearings, right? Yes, okay.
That's my motion, Mayor.
Okay. 6B2 will be the first item after public hearings are over. I have a second by the Vice Mayor. All in favor, all opposed? That's been approved 6-0 to just reorder the agenda. 6B2 will be the first item after public hearings have finished. All right, we're going back to
Mayor, may I be recognized? Was that 6B2?
6B2.
Thank you.
5D1, we are for the Office of Financial Management and Budget. And the public hearing is required to implement this collection method to new special assessment projects to be included in the 2022 tax bill. Does anybody need a presentation? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
I got a motion by Commissioner Kerner. Do I have a second?
Hold on, let me just make sure there's no others. Well, there is one non-speaking on. Wrong.
Okay, all right. Do I have a second? Going once, I got Commissioner Sacks. All right, I have a second. All in favor, all opposed? Show that 5D1 has been approved by a vote to 6-0. Thank you, everybody. We'll get to you later, Sherry. We're going to let you save your energy for later. All right. We are now on to our regular agenda. And so this is now, we're going to first take 6A1, and then we'll take 6B2. That's our favorite items because of our legislature who feels that Laura Beebe cannot make these decisions without our oversight. So I'm looking for a motion to approve 6A1, A and B.
So moved.
I have a motion by Commissioner McKinley, seconded by Vice Mayor. All in favor? All opposed? Show that is approved 6-0. We're now going to move on to 6B2. 6B2 is another item. It's under Facilities Development and Operations, but it's also at the airport, and it's also here because it exceeds $325,000. Do I have a motion? I have a motion by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Sacks. All in favor? All opposed? Show that is approved 6-0. Always great to see you, Ms. Beebe. All right, moving right along. We are now on to 6B1. I have a feeling I'm going to have a little conversation on this one. All right, this is an item that has to do with a direction that this body gave to staff to review the opportunities for businesses and other organizations to use some of our facilities especially at times when we're not using them. And specifically, before us right now is Andre Design District, which is a facility that is adjacent to the South County Administrative Complex. So, Isame?
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Isami Ayala, Director of Facilities Development and Operations. With me here today is Purvi Bugaira, Director of Property and Real Estate Management, Eric McClellan, Director of FDO Strategic Planning, and Howard Falcon, Chief Assistant County Attorney. As you may recall, back in April of this year, during the Board of County Commissioners scheduled workshop meeting, and as part of public comment following a presentation by county staff regarding the South County Administrative Complex Master Plan, an attorney representing Andre Design District, located adjacent to the complex, requested that the board direct staff to negotiate a lease agreement for the use of county-owned parking facilities at the complex to benefit an operator within the Andre Design District. The board was generally supportive and directed staff to review the request in order to determine if the same could be accommodated. Consistent with board direction, staff further evaluated the request and met with the attorney and its client to discuss the proposal. Recently, the staff has received 3 other requests for the use of county-owned facilities. Therefore, to ensure consistency in reviewing the requests and to avoid the operational challenges and demand on staff resources that addressing this type of request on a case-by-case basis will entail, the staff has combined the 4 requests into this agenda item. I am going to apologize in advance. This presentation is going to be a little bit lengthier than typical for a regular item. However, we feel that we needed to provide you a background of operations and needed to cover several areas. So with...
and I think we agree with you. I think that we want to look at this. I think there's some policy decisions that need to be made today.
I do appreciate that, thank you. So with that said, we will be providing recommendations on each individual request, as well as recommending a general policy to be followed by staff in reviewing future requests. Before delving into each one of those requests, it is important to provide you with a general context of what our parking operations entail. The Facilities Development and Operations Department oversees approximately 800 facilities, and that translates into approximately 14 million square feet of space, out of which about 10 million represents vertical construction, with the remaining square footage being associated with ancillary site improvements. In general, through the design and construction phases, each one of those facilities was provisioned with a total number of parking spaces, not only meeting or exceeding the applicable regulatory requirements as prescribed by the permitting authority of the jurisdiction where each facility is located, but also any anticipated peak operating demand for parking. Historically, the county, through FDO, has remained very, very cognizant of parking needs and has planned its facilities accordingly to ensure its ability to sustain delivery and public receipt of county services into the future. The vast majority of our parking areas rely on an open, free parking environment where employees and members of the public can access the spaces based on availability and free of charge. However, there are a number of county-owned facilities that have restricted access to parking areas in order to accommodate specific uses. Clear examples: employee-only sections, judicial operations, and law enforcement. Only 3 county-owned facilities are subject to parking fees for public use: the Judicial Center Parking Garage and Lot, the Governmental Center Parking Garage, and the 4th Street Parking Lot. To manage parking operations, FDO has a staff complement of 7, 1 parking facilities coordinator and 6 parking attendants, and our operations run from Monday through Friday from 5:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. These 3 previously mentioned facilities, collectively with the State Attorney Public Defender Building parking lot, are referred to as the downtown parking facilities. The State Attorney Public Defender parking lot being the only location where there is no public access. Overall, the downtown parking facilities provide about 2,800 parking spaces. Parking fees were originally established in 1995, were revised in 2012, and have remained constant since then. In establishing those fees, the county's intent was to ensure parking space availability for county services and operations while maintaining accessibility to a price structure that is responsive to the surrounding environment. For those reasons, the county's parking rates have historically, and they continue to date, track below market levels when compared to adjacent public and privately owned parking accommodations in the area. In other words, parking operations have not been construed as a revenue-generating or profit-maximizing endeavor, but rather as a tool to ensure adequate parking capacity for government personnel and affording accessibility for members of the public seeking to obtain government services. Given the underlying policy used for the establishment of the parking fees, it is not surprising that expenses for parking operations, personal expenses, have usually exceeded revenues. We have included a summary of the last 3 fiscal years as part of an attachment to the agenda item, and we have also included a summary of our maintenance and capital improvement costs for the last 3 years. Also, for context purposes, it is important to have an overview of the standard process followed by county staff to allow for one-time and short-term use of county-owned facilities. In October of 2013, this board approved a revised standard license agreement for use of county-owned property for non-county uses. The delegation of authority which provided for the county administrator or designee to execute standard license agreements was designed to expedite and streamline the process for commercial use of county-owned property. Under the standing process, an application must be submitted and no license fee will be assessed if the applicant demonstrates that the activity is for the purpose of promoting community interests and welfare, and the applicant will not realize a profit based on the use. The SLA is the board-approved tool which FDO uses to accommodate one-time and short-term uses of county-owned parking areas. Other than incidental uses authorized through the SLAs, the county has only 2 other agreements that provide for the use of county-owned parking areas over an extended term. The first one of those agreements is with the city of Delray Beach for the use of the South County Courthouse parking garage during off hours, and that one evolved from a 1986 development agreement between the city, the county, the Delray Beach Public Library, and the Delray Beach Community Redevelopment Agency for the development of the South County Courthouse and the Delray Beach Library in downtown Delray Beach. Said agreement included a funding plan back then that provided for the construction and sure use of the parking garage and the surface parking lot. The second agreement is a lease with Hive Home, Inc. for the use of approximately 0.15 acre of county-owned property for parking spaces located on the south side of a Palm Street property we own in West Palm Beach. This lease resulted from an invitation for bid issued in 2016. Leases of county-owned property are authorized under Section 22-104 of the county's real estate property acquisition, disposition, leasing ordinance. We commonly refer to that ordinance as the PREM ordinance. The same requires staff to utilize an invitation for bids or a request for proposals to lease county-owned property. The PREM ordinance has a number of exceptions as to when a competitive process can be omitted. If the staff is handling an extension or modification to an existing list, if there is only one person capable of reasonably utilizing the property, or if the lease term will not exceed 90 days. The PREM ordinance is implemented through the countywide PPM CWL 023, which also provides that direct negotiation is authorized when the county is dealing with another governmental agency. Both the PREM ordinance and the PPM are in alignment with the requirements for leasing and selling of county property under the Florida statutes. Now, with the benefit of this background information, please allow us to review each one of the pending requests. As I previously stated, on April 26, 2022, A representative for the Andre Design District requested that the board direct staff to negotiate a lease agreement for use of the county-owned parking spaces at the South County Administrative Complex. On May 10, 2022, county staff met with the representative and his client to further discuss the request. In summary, the requester would like for the county to enter into a lease that will provide off-hours access to 30 or 40 parking spaces at the complex. Please note that the graphic included on that slide was provided through a document supplied by the requester. The South County Administrative Complex is located in the city of Delray Beach, and as a result, city regulations control. Those regulations state that lease spaces are intended, that if lease spaces are intended to meet code requirements, then a written agreement with the city will be required, provided that the land comprising the alternate off-street parking area shall never be disposed of except in conjunction.
I'm gonna interrupt you for a second.
Can you slowly repeat that? I'm having a very hard time following what the regulations in Delray Beach are. Thank you.
And my apologies, I will go back. We'll slow down. And I was cautioned about that, so. As I stated before, the complex is located in the city of Delray Beach. Actually, after the workshop meeting, we had city staff reach out to us and raise a flag as well, letting us know that their regulations that apply state the following. If the lease spaces are intended to meet code requirements, then a written agreement with the city will be required, providing that the land comprising the alternate off-street parking area shall never be disposed of, except in conjunction with the transfer or sale of the building which the parking area is intended to serve, so long as the parking facilities are required. City regulations further require that the property owner agree to the document being in a recordable form, to carry all recording expenses, and have the agreement be a covenant running with the land, binding upon the owners, administrators, successors, and assigns. And as I stated before, those city regulatory implications were brought to our attention by city staff after learning of the requester's interest during the workshop meeting. Okay, so it will mean basically that if the parking spaces are required for the use under code requirement, then the county will need to enter into an agreement with the city for said purposes.
So is that in fact the case?
I can continue to tell you what the requester states, okay? And that's actually my
We can't find out from the city?
Well, it depends on the applicant, right? So,
All right, can I ask a question here? You said if it is the code requirement, da-da-da-da. All right, so if the Andre Design District has adequate parking to satisfy the city without these additional 30 or 40 spots, then none of what you just read is applicable.
that has been their statement. They have represented to us that they don't need the spaces to meet code requirements, that it will be an addition as a good-to-have accommodation they would like to provide, and I'm paraphrasing here, right?
So-
An additional provision of parking spaces.
So to clarify, what you just read to us is not applicable.
It will depend on the application they submit. Remember, we are not the ones reviewing that application. so-
Understood, but if they are in operation today, as the vice mayor says, if we reach out to the city and they say, yes, they are in code compliance,
And they don't need the
and
additional
they just want
spaces.
extra parking for whatever reason, then none of this specific
Well,
paragraph is going to control.
That representation is correct.
Okay.
Indeed. As long as
Commissioner
the
Kerner?
city confirms that is not a requirement per code, and that depends on their application.
Okay, fine.
Well, Mayor, I think you highlighted the point that I was interested in, but is it a necessity for the applicant, at least in this instance, Andre Design District, to submit an application to this city government?
The city government holds the regulatory process. We don't.
Correct, but for them to enter into a private agreement, either with another property owner, whether it's a governmental entity or not, do they need to file an application with the city of Delray Beach?
If I may, in zoning world, zoning regulations, it is very typical to have restrictions and regulations against off-site parking. The intent is always to provide required parking, supportive parking on-site, unless there's certain conditions or provisions that are met. In this case, the fact that the city staff alerted us to their concern would indicate that there are some regulations that could apply, and I definitely think it would be wise for all of the parties to coordinate to run that to ground. To this point in time, we have not heard anything from the requester speaking to the city's regulations or coordination with the city staff. Again, trying to maintain good relations with the city, we certainly do not want to put ourselves in a situation where we are encouraging or abetting non-compliance with their regulations.
So do they have to submit an application to the city or not?
I think the city would need some information to analyze in order to determine if there is a city requirement. Again, when the city staff heard this first time at the workshop, they have no details, they're not aware. They know they have regulations related to off-site parking, and they simply wanted us to be aware that they have regulations. Again, to me, that was a flag that there needs to be some coordination with those municipal representatives to make sure we are not violating their code.
I'm a little distressed by this because this body basically gave direction to try and figure out how this could get done, and now we are basically being told we have incomplete information today to make this decision. Now, again, as the Vice Mayor pointed out, it appears that the language that you read to us says that they can't get approval to use that property, that parcel, relying upon the spaces that they are asking us to lease to them. But that's not the case. They have, and I will ask Mr. Schiller, yeah, I see him back there. I will ask Mr. Schiller later, when you're finished with your presentation, to clarify what the status is of that property. But if that property today has adequate parking, all of this conversation, from my understanding, is moot.
Can we take a break and call the city and just find out?
So, if I may,
All right, let's let Isami finish her presentation, and then we can take a quick break of 15 minutes for whatever, and then we'll come back to this. Commissioner Sachs, did you want to interject at this point?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. Thank you very much. Presentation is good. We have it on paper, and I'm following along our fast reader here. I'd like to let's just take a breath, and after the presentation, Mr. Mayor, if we could hear from the applicant, so we can find out from him whether he has already done these prerequisites before coming before the county.
Well, there's an allegation being made that we may have to require compliance with Delray Beach in assigning this, and it should be clear right now whether or not they have the adequate number of parking spaces as required by Delray code or not. And if they don't, then the discussion of this
Sure.
issue is moot.
Well, I'm just, if I may respond, Mayor, I'm learning a lot about parking. It's one of my favorite topics. But let me just say this. I am sure that Mr. Schiller is I would say officer of the court, but he's reputable. And I'm sure he is. And that he would tell us whether or not he's filed for, whether he has filed and received, these prerequisites from the city, so that then we can make a decision based on these requirements as expressed by Isami.
Thank you, Commissioner Sachs, and our attorney would like to help us through this.
I think I'm a little confused about the conversation because the question of whether or not we want to enter into a parking agreement is separate from the question of whether the applicant needs to do something with the city. Our agreement can always be conditioned on them getting approvals with the city as necessary. We don't have to, I don't know why they would have to have an application approval with the city first. I just don't understand where we're going.
I'll let you answer in a second, but I think what's been represented to us, and I think that it's certainly accurate, that for them to have gotten a CO to have these stores operating, they would have to have adequate space
Right.
for their cars.
But that's not our issue.
That's not our issue, and that's why I was concerned that when we were hearing this language, it really didn't appear to be appropriate to our consideration of whether we were going to lease or not. So can you help us through that?
Let me take a step back and let's try this in a different way, if I may. First and foremost, we are bringing all the information we're bringing forward to make sure we provide you a rounded view, okay? When we receive a request to lease spaces, that request can be triggered by two main reasons, okay? And I'm generalizing, obviously, not covering every single possibility. But I will argue that it can be triggered by two main reasons. First, because as a private entity, I am trying to develop something, whatever that something might be, a business, an operation, and I need the spaces to be able to comply. That's option one. Or option two, I have an operation and I would like to supplement my operation with those additional spaces. I stopped midway through my presentation. Had I continued, you will then have heard another portion that says the applicant represents that he doesn't need the spaces for code compliance. So we do not control the application, the applicant does. We felt, and I personally felt, I'm going to take obviously that responsibility, that we needed to provide a thorough view of the entire field. So under the field, because we don't control the application, if the applicant doesn't need to do anything else, and he already has an authorized use, and this is only an add-on, restrictions will not apply, okay? But if it is a code-required
Okay, all
use,
right,
then we have the requirements that tie to
All
the
right,
city.
And
that clear?
Commissioner Bernard is going to ask a question, but before he does, it seems to me, from everything you've said thus far, the only speed bump so far in the way is the 90-day provision. That the only way we can do this without going out
Competitive
for a bid
process.
would just to do a short-term 90-day lease. Is that your position?
That is our position at this point. The only exception under the ordinance, well, there are other exceptions. The applicant argues that he's the only one capable of utilizing the space. County staff does not agree with that, and in fact, we have some examples to show you. But if this board were to decide to direct us to enter into a lease without a competitive process, the PERM ordinance provides for a 90-day lease.
Okay, I'm going to go to Commissioner Bernard, and then the Vice Mayor would like to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'm having a hard time with this item because, you know, we had a workshop and the board kind of like gave staff direction in terms of how we wanted to proceed. And then now staff is telling us how they feel about it, but the board already had given direction. So I'm like, it's like staff is telling us how they want to proceed, but we kind of like gave directions. Like, I just believe that we're the policy folks, and, you know, like, you're telling us what to do, but we kind of like told you how we wanted to proceed. And again, it's not our job, is it our job to make the decision here, or is it staff?
So, Commissioner, we understood the direction during the workshop to go meet with the applicant and explore if his request could be accommodated. And therefore, we're bringing that back, as you stated, the board sets policy, we don't, with a recommendation about how to pursue it. In the process, we received 3 other additional requests, and we felt it will be better to bring them all together as they all relate to parking operations. But we understood the direction to be At the time, the center of attention was on the complex master plan, and we were told, to the best of my recollection, please go back, meet with the requester, and come back and let us know if this is feasible or not. So we believe to be compliant with that board direction.
Okay, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. There's no provision to do something, and you said 90 days, so you could do a 90-day pilot project.
Our prime ordinance states that to lease or dispose of county property, we need to go through a competitive process, and that needs to be done through invitation for bids or request for proposals. The prime ordinance provides several exceptions, and I think if you can go back, several exceptions that we can apply. One of those is having a 90-day lease. We also have the ability to avoid the competitive process if there's only one person capable of utilizing the property, and we also get an authorization to avoid the competitive process if we are amending or extending an existing lease. Okay, and Howard, if I miss one of them, feel free.
Doesn't want to say a word.
But I believe those are the key ones.
So there's nothing like a pilot program that if we wanted to run it for 4 or 6 months to see if in fact this is something that's manageable, that it's beneficial to the county and/or somebody who would be interested in utilizing the property in the off hours.
If I might, I'd maybe like to back up a little bit on this and explain more the way the law approaches this. Under the law, we are generally required to bid out things of this nature. There are some exceptions in the statutes, but those primarily...
Get a little closer to the mic.
Sure. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Yeah. But those are primarily related to transactions with governmental entities or not-for-profits, or there's one for exchanges, that sort of thing. But there really isn't anything for private industry. Now, as Isami was saying, our ordinance does say bid them out, basically. Invitation to bid or request for proposal. There are these 3 exceptions there. The one the proposer wanted to utilize is the one that relates to essentially sole source, the only person that can utilize the property. I personally don't believe that's the case here. I was just on Papa looking at the area, and there is a property immediately to the north of it that has as good an access or as convenient an access as this proposer would. But convenience alone, I don't think, is enough. I mean, it really needs to be the only person that could utilize it, and I don't think that's what we're dealing with here. So, in my opinion, there's no harm in bidding it out. It's a benefit. It's a good thing. We're not going to, we can end up in the same place if no one else bids, if they truly are the only person that can utilize it.
I guess my concern would be, because this is we've never done this, to bid it out and to go through those steps when we don't know even if it's going to even work. And so to tie somebody up into a contract, a long-term contract, I don't know that it would even make sense.
Well, we have done it.
Yeah.
We did it at Hive Home. It's one of the examples that Isami brought up earlier. We had the same kind of situation there, and we said we need to go out to bid, and we did, and they were the bidder in that instance, and they are still utilizing it to this day.
So,
but I think that's just because of my familiarity with it, it's very small scale.
Yes.
And so it was known to them, what their need, that they had that absolute need, and that they were going to continue to need that availability, so they could in fact make a bid. I think where we're at right now, and I mean, I think I don't want to speak for the rest of the board, but I thought, what we thought was, let's see if there's a way to make this work, not try and create the entire program. Let's try and take the steps, to figure out if in fact this makes sense for us. Does it make financial sense for us? I mean, how would we know? How would you evaluate a bid if you got one bid back and they offered you $1 a month, and that was your highest and best bid? We would accept that?
Commissioner, we establish the parameters through the RFP process and the invitation for bid. Okay, so that's our basis. I am putting on the screen request number 2. I will not delve in the request right now, but High Homes is the property to the north.
I'm very well aware of Hive
So,
Homes.
If I may, then, I think as it relates to South County Admin Complex, is just a lease of properties, nothing else. We have standing directions for the redevelopment of the site. So if we were to enter into a lease in any instance, our recommendation will be we need to have a provision in place that will allow us to get out of the lease if needed to accommodate the redevelopment. And I also have an update of where we are in regards to that redevelopment.
Commissioner McKinley?
I want to thank you for bringing the presentation, and I know sometimes we have ideas and we're not completely cognizant of all of the impacts that some of those ideas have, so I appreciate you bringing back your concerns to us, for us to consider. On this particular site, since you did have a few other requests that came through, I mean, how much of Pandora's box are we opening ourselves up to here?
That's a concern. Certainly we have. That's another reason why we believe a competitive process should be recommended. I'm going to skip a little bit back and forth, but one of the matters that we wanted to share with the board was how we have interpreted before the board and staff recommendation to be the only person capable of utilizing the space, okay? And I did a cursory review in preparation for this meeting, and only a few examples came up, okay? I have included 3 of those. One, in July 2019, it was a conveyance related to a state that mistakenly conveyed the property to the county without our knowledge. So they were wrapping up matters on the decedent, and they put together a county deed. Property ended up with the county, came back saying mistake, shouldn't have, and then the county staff recommended, yes, we should convey this back. Second instance was actually a property highlighted on the back towards the top left of the screen. This person bought the property in 2014, didn't get recorded through PAPA. We acquired the property in 2016 through tax deed. The person came back and said, that's my property, I was never notified. And in fact, a notification was not issued. So county staff recommended that it be treated as the only person capable of utilizing the space to correct procedural challenges or errors in the past. And then the third example has to do with submerged lands, and you may see a teeny, very small triangular area where we have only one adjacent owner to the north of those riparian upland property. And then county staff recommended, and this board approved, that determination of the only one person capable of utilizing the space. So if I, or the real property, if I provide you that as an example, that's why we feel strongly to the comment that Howard made before, that in the case of South County Admin, in the context of how the space currently is laid out and the access to other users. If the board wishes to enter into a lease agreement, which we can certainly do, then our recommendation will be to compete it.
Well, I was more interested in setting a precedent in terms of parking facilities. Appreciate the education on submerged lands. But how, if you went forward with this one without doing an RFP process, what are you setting up yourself for in terms of precedent and possible legal challenges in the future if another request came in and we didn't move forward on it?
We are certainly opening a door, Commissioner. I cannot say it any other way. Our ordinance provides us the guidelines. It will create, I will argue, a challenge with our planning for our own uses. When this item was put together, we had 4 requests. In the meantime, from being submitted to today, we received 1 additional one and then heard informally about a 6th one. So, they're starting to pile up, and that's the reason why we wanted to recommend a policy moving forward, just so that we have consistency and we're able to safeguard the infrastructure as well that we need to provide for county operations.
And then the other questions I have of these particular parking spaces and then some of the other requests that have come in. Who's responsible for the liability if a crime occurs in those parking lots while they're being utilized by the other entity? The maintenance, or if something happens to the vehicle, the maintenance of the parking area, the hours of operation, what hours are they allowed to use those parking spots? Who is responsible for the removal of the vehicle if the vehicle is still sitting there after the hours of operation? Who provides the security? And then what keeps the leasee from actually charging patrons or employees more than what they're paying us and then making money themselves off of utilizing those parking spots?
So first, to answer a question regarding liability, Scott Martin, the county's Director of Risk Management, is sitting on the audience, so I'm going to call on Scott. Right, thank you.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. When we reviewed this, there's a couple different things that we discussed. The first one is if we contract with a private agency, then obviously part of the agreement is that they indemnify us, provide insurance, and so on. If we were to enter into agreements with another public entity, there are some restrictions under the Sovereign Immunity Standard under 76828. So what I would probably do in that case is, depending on the board's direction, I would purchase an ancillary policy. They're very cheap in nature for this particular issue. I could carve it out, and we'd be in the low thousands, somewhere between $1,000 and $3,000, depending on the scope. I think one of the things that obviously could come up is we could all of a sudden go from 3 lots to 10 lots, or whatever. So I could build off of a policy. At this particular point, the indications are from our broker that's about what it would cost, and that way we would have first dollar coverage and protect the county from anything moving forward. So from that standpoint, I think that's how we would handle it. But obviously, the underwriters would look at the safeguards and measures that we put in place, how the agreements were structured, and so on.
If we were talking about the DDA, you're talking about a policy, but if we're talking about Andre's design, we wouldn't need the policy?
They are a private entity, so they would fully indemnify us. Part of the agreement would be that. That's correct.
Okay, very good. I just want to clarify that. Thank you for your information. All right,
And
can I
Scott,
just...
that would absolutely, I'm sorry, Mayor, I wasn't completed yet. That would absolutely prevent us from being sued if, God forbid, a woman is leaving that design district and is sexually assaulted at 2 o'clock in the morning and her car is parked in our lot.
So just to clarify, it would not protect us from being sued. It would basically allow us to have the insurance company step into our shoes at $1, provide the protection under litigation, the attorneys, and so on. We would have Ms. Kaufman's group probably kind of monitor it, but they would be responsible for the claim at the beginning. We have a similar coverage, for what it's worth, at the Palm Beach International Airport and all the surrounding airports. We have first dollar coverage, so when a claim comes in, it's immediately turned over to the insurance company and they handle it moving forward. And because of the minimal cost associated with doing something similar, I think my recommendation would be that if, based on your direction and what direction you give, that's what we would consider doing.
Normally, what we would do as part of the agreement is we would require the applicant to have insurance for this type of thing. So it wouldn't just be the indemnity, they would also have insurance and even perhaps a bond to protect us.
Well, just
And we also are pretty extensive in the agreements as far as what their security obligations are and how they have to respond to incidents that happen. If there's some incident, someone's attacked in the parking lot, how are they going to, respond to that to our satisfaction? So there are a lot of things in the contract that addresses those things.
But we don't have, just for clarification, we don't have indemnification language without insurance language, because anybody can tell you that they're going to protect you, but they need to have the financial wherewithal to do it, and that's the purpose of the insurance.
Thank you. All right, let's start all over again.
No.
Because we'll start from scratch. to Commissioner Bernard's remarks before, I think that I'm a little distressed that this became more of a reason why not to do it, and I understand you are trying to protect us from ourselves. I understand that. But we also gave an indication we really wanted to be good neighbors, support commerce, and see if this thing could be accomplished. And the only thing I've heard so far from the presentation that, as I called it, as a speed bump, was the provision that we could only do this for 90 days unless we're going to say this is the only person who can use that lot. And then we would have to make a decision on RFP. And of course, putting that on your shoulders when everything else you have to do is another task.
Because we stopped the presentation, right?
Understood. Okay. So
But
I
with-
just want to be understood that, and I'm not speaking for my colleagues, and obviously Commissioner McKinley is also is indicating she's having some reservations about this, but I think several of us from the conversation here are trying to figure out a way to get this accomplished, and I would prefer to feel that you were helping us facilitate versus telling us why we shouldn't do it.
And Mayor, if I may, right? I believe, and the county administrator can correct me at any given point, but we are here to act at your direction, right? So we, again, because I got stopped along the way, I didn't get to the point where
I'm going to interrupt you one more time for Commissioner Kerner, and then we're going to let you get on with this.
Thank you, Mayor. And as an aside, we often think that there's a good idea that we want to accomplish, and then when you start pulling back the layers, it becomes a bit more complicated, and that's life, and that's, I think, what's happening here. I think we all sort of initially indicated we wanted to try to get this done, but now we're having a discussion about what the implications are. So I, for one, deeply appreciate the depth of information that you provide, not just today, but in all of your briefings to the board. Having said that, it sounds like all the restrictions that you've spoken about that bring this within the ambit of the PREM ordinance involve a conveyance of the county's interest in the land. Is there a way to facilitate this without a conveyance, such as a license agreement?
We can, so a couple comments, certainly. So going back to the mayor questions and yours, if the board wishes to do this, then we can certainly put together a competitive process. With all the conditions that might be required as part of that RFP, with a term and termination that allows an easy way out if needed, right? So that the process can continue. We have under the PREM ordinance for leases, we have 90 days, as I stated before. Under the standard license agreements, we do short-term and timers, so I shouldn't be using that tool, but I do think that under the PREM ordinance, if the board wishes us to pursue a lease agreement, we can certainly do so. We have the tools. It's just a matter of policy about which way we're heading. But to your point, Mayor, we can certainly accommodate the use if need be. It's just a matter of making sure we have the correct provisions in place.
Okay. So is there an ordinance or PPM that says standard license agreement must terminate after 5 days or something related to like in a weekend event?
We're going to add. The ordinance provides for a 90-day lease, okay? And that's section 22-104. So answer to first part of the question. The standard license use agreement was meant for short-term uses and was approved in 2013. So unless county attorney feels differently, I will recommend going through the ordinance and putting an agreement in place as we have done other times.
Okay. And then earlier in the presentation, you talked about the standard license agreement that the county utilizes for events. And I think this was the only scenario that is somewhat analogous to what we're looking at, which is, not conveying an interest in land in perpetuity. Obviously, we're not talking about that. But when we have, I think the metrics that you stated for an SLA embraced a nonprofit motive, and B, some sort of community engagement and interest. But like during Sunfest, our entire parking lot is taken from the county operations for that time period, and I have to think that there's a profit profit-driven motive there. So how do we reconcile?
That is correct. The two conditions that you just mentioned that I had referenced before are the conditions when a fee is, the applicant is exempted from paying a fee. We can also do a commercial use under the SLA, and we charge a fee determined on a case-by-case basis, okay? And that's why during Sumfest, for example, which is a 3-4 day event, more or less, we at FDO approve that license and then send the board a copy of the approved license with the permit. So those are the tools we have to be able to manage uses of county facilities, which we do on a recurrent basis, and I want to make that very clear. My department handles a significant amount of SLAs for community uses, for private uses, but they're one-time, short duration, right? When we enter into a long-term agreement where we need to have very clear conditions about, to Commissioner McKinley's point, who's going to remove the vehicle, if it is there at 7 a.m., you know, who's going to address security and the like, our recommendation will be, let's do that through a formal lease agreement. And once we enter that field, then we fall under the PREM ordinance.
But are there parameters in the SLA policy that says it must be short duration? Has the board spoken and made into law that stopgap?
I'm running here on my recollection. It came back in 2013 with the intent of being short duration as a license. It can certainly be modified, you know, if that is the way this board will like us to proceed.
Because in this instance, you know, if we enter into a lease, that's a conveyance of our interest, and it gives exclusive use to the applicant in this case, whereas a license agreement says you can use it, but we're not guaranteeing that you're going to have access to all these spaces. Maybe someone parks illegally, whatever. It's a lesser interest in land, but also may provide for an easier route for us to accommodate everything that Mayor Weinroth stated about embracing being good neighbors and commerce. So, you know, maybe we should be looking at a standard license agreement in this instance that doesn't provide exclusive use.
Just to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, then if it doesn't provide exclusive use, it doesn't give the user, obviously, the guarantee that they will have the spaces, which is a little bit different just to compare to what we do during Sumfest.
You know, one in the hand, but we'll let him talk about, let the agent talk about what their ultimate goal and preference is. But, and I remain undecided on how I feel from a policy perspective on any of this, but at least we're getting past the threshold issue of can we do this, and if so, how? Thank you, Mayor.
And I have another person who'd like to speak with you, Vice Mayor.
Understood.
Thank you. I want to just shift a little bit over to the discussion on the governmental entities, and the DDA being a governmental entity, so they would be exempt.
We are authorized under the PREM ordinance and the PPM I mentioned before to enter into direct agreements with governmental entities. And that's why for the DDA and City of West Palm Beach was brought forward another one of the requests that we're sharing today. We're stating if so the board wishes, we can negotiate directly. It's just an interlocal, an MOU, you know.
And currently with the when you do something with intergovernmental, is there a fee associated with that, or could there be a fee associated with it?
It will depend on the terms that we negotiate with them, and that's done on a case-by-case basis. A recent facility SLA that we approved, I want to say for July 4th, with the city, they requested use of the Judicial Center lot, and it had a very minimal fee. I think it was to cover security services, very nominal. So we do that assessment on a case-by-case basis. You know, if that were to be the direction this board provides us, we will perform that assessment based on projected costs and so on and so forth.
And then if fees are collected, is there could those fees be used by the county for anything, or would there be a restriction on what they could be utilized for?
It will, again, depend on the agreement. Right now, it goes as revenues. All parking fees, facilities development collects at the 3 downtown parking facilities go through revenue, general fund in our budget. So I can only imagine we will follow the same process.
So, okay, all right. So, yeah, it's not going to a specific
Specific
enterprise,
fund,
it doesn't
no.
go to an enterprise fund?
It's just revenue to the general fund.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Isami, I'm going to let you continue.
Excellent. So when we stopped, I was about to share with the board an update of where we are with the South County redevelopment. You may recall that back in April, you told us this is a priority, please move forward. So I'm happy to report that last week we received proposals. You know, after the workshop meeting, we ran with it, and I'm being very loose with the use of the language. But in less than a month, we had completed the internal processes. We had advertised under the OEBO ordinance. We are required to have the advertisement up for 30 business days, which is about 4 or 5 calendar days. And we have been moving that process along. We received proposals last week. We got 7 proposals. We should be back to this board in the next 2 or 3 months, if everything goes well, with a contract for design services. And what I'm trying to convey is that we're trying to follow certainly that direction we were given to expedite the process. In the meantime, we have also retained consultant services for the review of the tower relocation, one matter that Commissioner Vice Mayor Weiss brought during the conversation, during the workshop meeting. So those 2 efforts are taking place concurrently. So given the board's standing direction to redevelop the complex and all the resources we're being actively invested into that effort, we were concerned about entering into additional leases, and I think we have discussed that previously today. However, if the board wishes, we can certainly proceed with a lease agreement. I am going to skip to slide 12, because we already discussed that. So with the benefit of all the historical context and how the exception to the rule has been applied, we recommend once again, or we state that we disagree with the application of the only person capable of utilizing it. We would also like to highlight that if we are going into a lease agreement, enter into a lease agreement, we would like to have the provisions there to make sure that when time comes for the redevelopment, we're able to terminate it and move it around as needed, because we see that as our primary direction to redevelop the site, and we're working towards that. Our recommendation will continue to be to compete it. That's what we have done in the past. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and transition to request number 2, which came from the city of West Palm Beach and relates to a county-owned...
Mr. Mayor, just hold on one second, please.
Yes, Commissioner, you're recognized.
No, before, on that slide 12, it says staff recommends against pursuing a competitive process. So you don't want us to do the competitive process also?
So our recommendation was, given the standing direction to redevelop the site, and that's what the agenda provides, we will prefer to continue with the redevelopment without adding any additional compounding variables, right? So continue clear so that we can be ready for the redevelopment and the other effort we have ongoing. However, if we're directed, and that's what I'm hearing so far, as to enter into a lease agreement, we will certainly do so.
And would you be okay with us doing the competitive process?
Certainly.
Okay.
That's
All right.
what the prime ordinance provides.
For clarity, let's stop with request 1. Let's not go on to 2 yet. Let's stay focused on the first request in front of us. Let's deal with that, and then we can move on to the DDA and elsewhere. All right, so we have in front of us, obviously, some speed bumps, as I've called them already, which appears to mean that from what has been presented to us, we could do a 90-day immediate lease with obviously the necessary liabilities removed from the county, with an immediate out of 30 days or whatever. If we needed to get back onto that property within the next 90 days, we could do an RFP during that period of time to see if anybody else was interested in it, and then you could draft with all the exculpatory language that's necessary to keep us from having any problems, including cars left behind, people who get hurt, and otherwise. That being said, what is we have a couple of comments. Does anybody up here want to talk on this issue before we have public comment? Commissioner, did you want to say something?
No, I want to hear the comment.
You want to hear the comment? All right, let's do public comments on this.
Thank you, Mayor. We have only 2 comment cards on agenda item 6B1, unless I missed anybody. We have Rafael Clemente with the West Palm Beach Downtown Development Authority and Neil Schiller.
I'm going to hold Raphael until we get to the next project.
Thank you so much, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Neil Schiller with the Government Law Group at 137 Northwest 1st Avenue in Delray Beach. I'm here today representing JMS Boynton Beach, LLC, the developer of the Andre Design District, located east of the South County Administrative Complex. And as you know, we're here because we want extra parking, and you have it. We're seeking up to 40 additional parking spaces at the South County Administrative Center from 6 p.m. to midnight, all day on weekends and holidays, when the county is not using these spaces. We proposed what we thought was very simple lease terms. An annual renewal term that's terminable within 30 days written notice for convenience. Lessee shall agree to all the hold harmless language, all the indemnification language, anything to shield the county from liability. Will maintain the parking spaces, will provide security for the parking spaces, and most importantly, the spaces will not be counted to meet any municipal parking requirement. These are just overflow spaces. My client has a big event coming up in October where they're going to really do a big launch of the district, and obviously spaces and utilization of those spaces afterwards are going to be very important for us. We understand that staff wants to competitively lease these parking spaces. However, I disagree. I truly think that we are the only person that can lease the spaces, and I'm going to tell you how. Number one, our location, which is, by the way, you're allowed to look at location and use and restrictions of use on the property when determining the sole person being able to use the property as the highest and best use. We're proposing to keep the spaces as parking spaces, which is their highest and best use because they're only going to be used by my client a period of time during the day. Additionally, the code specifically allows this board to make that decision, whether or not there's one person who can reasonably utilize the spaces at the highest and best use. And I submit that my client is that person. However, in the alternative, we heard that there's the ability to do a 90-day lease provision unsolicited and without going through a competitive process. Why don't we do 2 90-day lease provisions? Get data, make it a pilot project. And then that way you can start developing a cohesive policy so that you know how that site works particularly. And then thirdly, we talked about flexibility. The reason that we've proposed all of these outs and all of this flexibility is because we understand that this site is going to be redeveloped at some point. And we would hope...
Schiller.
Thank you. Well, one last thing, Mr. Mayor, please. We would hope that you continue to work with us to allow this fledgling district that just got featured in the Palm Beach Post to grow and grow responsibly and grow when the county isn't using that asset.
All right.
Thank
Just
you.
one question for you.
Yes.
Are you representing that your client has the necessary parking available to him so that the municipal requirements on his property have been met?
I'm not only representing that he has all the parking to meet the municipal requirements, that if he should seek additional entitlements, that any spaces used by the county will not be counted as required spaces. We will never use your spaces to meet a parking requirement. And in fact, frankly, you should be thinking about that as a standard policy, right? For the same reason that the city of Delray Beach has that code ordinance, that if you're not if you're just
I think
leasing
you've
the
been
spaces.
responsive. You've been responsive.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anybody else have questions, Mr. Schiller? Okay, you're dismissed.
Thank you so much.
All right, let's focus on this matter before us. Does anybody want to opine or make a motion or give direction? Commissioner Sachs?
You're reading my mind. It seems to me, and I direct this at staff, it seems to me that upon the applicant's petition, that they meet the statutory requirements and/or they will meet the statutory requirements under the law for these additional parking spaces. Am I reading this correctly? And I'm looking at probably you, Isami?
That's
Yes.
their representation,
Okay.
that's
Right.
their
Okay.
statements, certainly.
Then, at this point, I would make a motion to, unless there's somebody else who wants to speak.
Well, we got a couple more speakers, so why don't
Sure
we
there
hold
are.
just for a second on the
Sure.
motion? Let's, lights just went out. All right.
We still have speaker cards? Is that what you said?
No, we're done with speaker
Oh.
cards, so, all right. Wow, the lights all came back on again. All right, Commissioner McKinley?
And we are strictly talking about the South County facility at this time?
Right.
Okay, just want to make that clear. I think what staff has presented to us is that they have a requirement under Florida statute, under the procurement rules, that it needs to go out for RFP. The other parties, the other adjoining properties probably didn't even know that this was an option. It's now become clear that this is an option, and I think that it needs to go out for RFP so we meet the guidelines of Florida statutes.
Okay, Commissioner Kerner.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to be candid with the board so we can find some direction, it'll be difficult for me to commit to a policy perspective on this application only without knowing about the other applications. And my fear is that if we provide, if we vote to affirm this now, we're going to be binding ourselves to some degree on the later applications. I know there's nuances and differences, but I would like to consider the issue as a whole. There's a distinction between garages, there's a distinction between flat surface parking lots, and I think we need to have a full picture before we make any decision on.
Okay, Commissioner Kerner? I'm sorry, Commissioner Bernard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do support getting the full presentation, so in that way we can make a holistic decision.
Holistic.
Yes. And also, I do not believe that the applicant could be the only sole source, and I think that an RFP would be appropriate. So in that way, if we're going to address this in the future, we're giving everybody that opportunity to bid on if we decide on a policy decision. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would be inclined to give the 90 days and then to do the RFP, but let's continue, and I think the board would like to hear the rest of the presentation. Isami, it's your turn again.
So I'm going back to request number 2, and that's actually a request that came from the city of West Palm Beach. The county owns a clerk of courts record storage facility at 429 Park Place. We have 7 spaces outside the fence area, and the city of West Palm Beach has approached us, I think it was back in February, March, maybe, more or less, if my memory doesn't fail me, because they are experiencing some challenges in the area, and they would like to know if the county can enter into an agreement with the city to have them use those spaces for the provision of parking accommodations by the visitors to the retail operations in the area. As I stated before, the board wouldn't need a competitive process under the PREM PPM to be able to enter into an agreement with the city, because it is another governmental entity. We do not foresee any minimal, if any, operational impacts from leasing those 7 spaces. That lease will be very similar to the one we have to the north with Hive Homes. The clerk office also confirmed that they had no objections, so that is a request that we are recommending. The remaining two requests relate to key downtown county facilities that have historically been on the radar of numerous stakeholders for non-county uses. County staff has consistently recommended against their use for non-county uses, and furthermore, has advised and cautioned the authorities with jurisdiction as to the potential negative implications that sustained approval of development permits lacking adequate parking accommodations will entail. Eric, to my right, has been a primary actor in many of those exchanges, and as a result is exceptionally well-positioned to discuss the history, the pending requests, and the staff recommendations.
Thank you, Ismi. Hope everybody didn't fill up on appetizers, because here we're starting to get into the meat of the discussion, if you will. I think you're all familiar with the concept that's been raised by the Downtown Development Authority, requesting use of our 4th Street parking lot, which is located immediately adjacent to our current location, in order to accommodate some off-hour employees associated with the restaurant, hospitality, and retail industries. The goal would be to have employers pay for parking spaces to accommodate their employees. And the authority has offered to be responsible for the daily cleaning of the lot, as well for ensuring that no vehicles under the pilot arrangement would remain on site when county operations resume. Obviously, the presence of pilot vehicles during regular work hours would have impacts on county and other government staff being able to access parking and in turn deliver public services. When we reviewed the request, we did ask the authority if they have a similar pilot in place with the city of West Palm Beach, and they indicated that they did not. Even though they're a taxing district within the city, the authority does not have an operational agreement with the city related to their management of city-owned parking garages. Beyond the operational impacts, we also wanted to make you aware that we questioned some of the underlying causes for the lack of parking in the area. And as Isami had indicated, county staff attributes this to a number of factors which we have been fairly vocal about throughout recent years. To give you some examples, for one, obviously the redesign and reconstruction of Clematis Street had the effect of eliminating a number of on-street parking spaces that were available to the public. Compounding that is the significant reduction in the number of parking spaces required for new construction and new uses under the city's downtown master plan zoning and land development regulations. We've also, in recent years, seen the disposal of city-owned property, namely the former City Hall, as well as the tent site, without any requirement for delivering parking infrastructure that would benefit the surrounding area. We've also seen increases in the rates being charged by the city for its on-street metered spaces, as well as their parking garages. And to our knowledge, neither the CRA, the DDA, or the city has committed any of its own funds toward delivering a parking supply that would be publicly beneficial and economically supportive. So we're really not surprised to see an increase in interest where there's a lower rate of parking and a parking supply available right here at our county complex. I think, just to paraphrase, perhaps where this is most clear is in the city's downtown parking and transportation demand management study that was performed at the same time that the downtown mobility plan was being developed by the city, and that was accepted by the City Commission on May 21st of 2018. There are multiple quotes throughout that document where county staff indicated that there should be no reliance placed on our facilities for the city's long-range planning objectives. And in fact, the report concludes that, quote, based on the study's analysis, there is adequate parking through 2030. And if aggressive TDM or transportation demand management strategies are pursued, there will be adequate parking through 2039. Yet here we are in only 2022, at the exact same time that we're starting to see mounting attention to the traffic impacts on Okeechobee Boulevard. So we feel that now to rely upon the county's inventory of parking needs would only undermine our historic planning for county government facilities and delay the mounting need for a permanent solution to address the downtown parking issue. Also, as you all know, the 4th Street parking lot is slated to accommodate a future expansion of judicial facilities, consistent with the judicial master plan update that was approved by this board in recent months. The exact timing of that expansion is very difficult to predict at this point in time, though projections are that that need will occur no later than the year 2040. So with the fate of the property not being dedicated to parking, we're reluctant to commit an expectation that there will be parking available on the site into the future.
Can I interrupt you a second?
Public use, yes, sir.
This all sounds like a "we told you so." And, okay.
I would agree.
All right. So that being said, and here we are today, and we were right and they were wrong. But that doesn't take the issue off the table.
Correct.
And we are a government entity working with another government entity, and my idea personally, and I haven't heard from my colleagues, is we should be good neighbors and do what we can to help them out of the spot that they put themselves in, if we can, without interfering with our own operations. So whether they made a mistake or poor planning or whatever doesn't really enter into my decision-making, whether we can offer them this opportunity as long as it's not going to impact us going forward. So I just want to, frame the issue. Can we do this? Is it legally possible, like we did with the last one? And then let us make a decision whether we want to put them in the penalty box and say, nah, you were wrong, or we're going to help you out.
Mayor, if I may.
Of course.
I think the message that we were trying to convey was, historically, we were concerned about getting to the point where we believe we are now, right? We can certainly, to your question, to the point, yes, we can accommodate this. We don't need to do a competitive process. We can enter into an agreement, but I think our ongoing concern will be the problem is not solved. We are basically doing an interim solution, and the base issue remains. So the question then becomes, what will happen when we move forward with the use that the county has planned for that facility?
Their problem, not ours,
So
really.
I think that's the message we were trying to convey by what was just shared, saying we kind of foresaw, and those that preceded me, and goes to Ms. Wolf, that steer facilities for so many years, as a planner, she certainly foresaw some of the things that were coming, and Eric was part of that team as well. Now we are there. An agreement will provide for an easy fix in the near future. How do we address the long term? And I think that's what we were trying to convey by
And we
what
understand
preceded.
that. Commissioner McKinley?
Yeah, I'm a hard no on this one. I think off the top of my head, the city has 4 of its own parking garages. A lot of the hospitality workers that work within City Place Related has their own parking garages within those. All of the hotel workers that they talk about, all of the hotels that have been constructed, all have their own parking garages. I feel like if we accommodate this, and then we're putting our own employees, and particularly our judicial or public defender and our state attorney employees at risk of not having parking, I think that the DDA needs to go to those other entities and come into agreements and lease agreements with those entities first, and we should be an entity of last resort. I would be more inclined to working with the University of Florida, who's starting new construction, that maybe the city ought to work with them to see if they can include some extra parking structures or parking spots in the buildings that they will be constructing. And I'd be more inclined to lease out the airspace above the Judicial Center complex, parking garage, and construct some affordable housing units in the airspace, and work with a private developer to redevelop the parking garages to accommodate both judicial employees and residents in those affordable housing units if we were ever able to build those. I think that's the type of creative partnership that we need. The DDA has several entities that they can go to right now after they walk out of this chamber and try to negotiate contracts with them and without utilizing our spaces.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Question, we have a public lot down there, don't we?
Correct, we do.
We do.
And so the public can park on our parking, on our portion of the parking lot at any time?
We have about 100 spaces on the public side, which is non-gated, it operates on pay on food type of equipment. So you park, you go to the equipment, and you pay.
So we currently have the ability to offer public parking places.
We do.
What's the utilization rate between 6 p.m. and 2 p.m.?
Our parking,
Or 2 a.m.?
I don't have an exact number to answer your question immediately. Our parking operates, or you're able to pay until midnight, and at that time closes, and monitoring for accountability, not having someone park, is done in coordination with PBSO. So that's the current operation, and I don't have
When's the last time we towed a car out of there?
I don't have that answer. I can obtain
My
that
point, the
response.
point I'm making is that we have the ability, we have the spaces available publicly, and to enter into an agreement, to do a blanket agreement for a number of those spaces seems to make total sense because they're not utilized. And as it relates to the issues of the city is going to be replacing the Banyan Street garage. That's slated for a total redo with a number of spaces being added in. But the fact and I'll let Raphael come up and talk about what the need is, but this is for the workers that work on Clematis. It doesn't make sense to send them up and across Quadrille at 2 or 3 in the morning to go pick their cars up from the Judicial Center and utilize that parking. This lot is much closer, much easier to help secure people when they're transiting from their place of employment. A lot of them have tips that they're carrying cash with them, and for them to be safely get to their vehicles. The city only allows a certain number of permittees, and so if they can't get the monthly permits, those employees can't use the city garages unless they go in on a per-hour basis. What we're trying to do is to facilitate the opportunities here for a short period of time while these changes or while other opportunities are made available for parking for these folks. They're asking for a short-term solution to this problem. They're not asking for a permanent solution to this problem. And I have to say I'm disappointed that this is coming in front of us in a way that doesn't recognize the reality of what we have. And they're not saying they could agree to send a tow truck through there, and I see the towing companies are here. They can go through there at 5 o'clock in the morning and tow every vehicle that isn't properly paid for itself. I mean, it seems totally manageable, but at the other hand, it helps us help, one of our partners, the city I live in, and constituents, Palm Beach County as well, with an asset that's not being utilized in the evenings.
Commissioner, just a point to clarify. The request relates to the employee-only portion of the lot. So that lot has 2 portions, the public that is open and the employee-only that is gated.
I understand. And I think Mr.
All right, thank you. Now, with the permission of my colleagues, I would like to try and knock out a couple of other issues because we have the Jupiter sitting here waiting to find out what's happening as far as their antenna. We have Place of Hope that's waiting to find out if we're going to approve their lease. I'd like to get those out of the way. We'll continue with this then until 12:15. At 12:15, we are going to break, and we will come back at 1 o'clock. There's a lot of stuff on this agenda, including millage, so I just want everybody out there to know that if it's not those 2 items, either 6B3 or 6B4, we're going to take them after lunch. So we're going to, if I get a motion to just table this until, got a motion to table until we've dealt with 6B2 and
3 and 4.
And 6B3 and 6B4, and then we'll come back to this. And actually, I think we already did 6B2 already. So it's just 6B3 and 6B4. All
Mayor,
right,
so the motion is to to table the current item and reorder the agenda for 6B3 and 6B4 to be heard now.
Okay. Vice Mayor, do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor, all opposed? Okay, that's 6-0. Stay put, don't go anywhere.
Understood.
Okay, we're going to take up item 6B3. Do I have a motion to approve 6B3?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve 6B3.
Okay, 6B3, A and B. I have Commissioner McKinley, seconded by Vice Mayor. All in favor, all opposed? That's approved 6-0. We move on to 6B4. That's the Jupiter issue. Do we need any presentation? Seeing
Mayor, just, sorry, in public comment, there's Kathy Kelly here. Did you want to waive your time, or did you want to speak to it? Okay, sorry. And I'll offer the motion on 6B4.
Okay.
Thank you. Still good morning. I just want to say, I came here to say thank you to each of you, because this has been a matter that's been taking, I think, 11 years. There are several of us here today in support of this, and there were also 1,700 local citizens who, one by one, we spoke with, who were all in agreement to move that 100-foot tower from the small parking lot to Ocean K Park. So we especially want to say thank you to Commissioner Marino, who was at the meeting on February 19th, along with 14 other people, where they finally got together. They all brainstormed, talked about it, and everyone was in agreement that this was the best plan of action. And so all these years later and all the effort later, this will really be a win-win for the county, for the town, and certainly for the corridor of our beach property. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your comments. All right, we have one more?
No, Mayor, but in offering the motion on 6B4, I'd like to publicly state that this will enhance the officer safety of Jupiter Town Police, along with the sheriff's deputies and our county employees, and so it's very good public policy.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Kerner, seconded by the Vice Mayor. All in favor, all opposed. That's approved, 6-0. Can go back to protecting Jupiter. All right, we're going to go back to our conversation on 6B2, and again, I know if we finish this item before 12:15, we're breaking at that point, so there will be no other items taken before lunch, and we have a hard stop at 12:15, and then we will come back at 1 o'clock and resume this item if we have not put it to bed by then.
So allow me to wrap up.
I'm sorry, we got two lights on. I'm going to go ahead and take Commissioner Bernard first, and then Commissioner McKinley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Vice Mayor Weiss mentioned, this is an item that I do support, and although I'm not a city commissioner in West Palm Beach in terms of their decisions, but I represent the residents of West Palm Beach. So whether the county wants to point their fingers at the city of West Palm Beach, my job is to make decisions that for the residents of West Palm Beach, and I believe that if there's an opportunity to work with the DDA and to address the parking situation, then that's my job to do. This is in my district, and I drive that area, and on the weekends it's pretty much dead. And some of the safety concerns, you have a parking right there that's already there. So I think that there is a way for us to work with the DDA and to try to make this work.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I'll remind my colleagues that we have a photo op after we break at 12:15 with the new bus that Clinton is here protecting. Okay, Commissioner McKinley.
Yeah, a question first. Mr. Vice Mayor, you made a comment that this is a temporary solution and a short-term solution, and I'm just curious what information backs that comment up? What makes this a short-term solution?
My understanding is the city is going to be redeveloping the Banyan Street garage. The garage that's across the street from us. That's going to be expanded.
Okay, so I have no problem in doing a temporary agreement to provide backup space while that garage is being constructed. I think that's a professional courtesy between governmental entities, and so long as that is temporary during construction. But I still think that the DDA needs to go to the city first, find out what they can get from the city, and then come back to us with a proposal of what they still need, and let us consider it at that time. I don't think we should be their first stop. I think they should go to the city
All right,
first.
I know Commissioner Sachs wants to speak, but I'm going to invite Mr. Clemente to come up.
Good morning, Commissioners. Rafael Clemente, Executive Director of the West Palm Beach Downtown Development Authority. I will call our challenge of parking a good problem to have. Somebody once said, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is we have a parking problem. The bad news is we have a parking problem. We're experiencing explosive growth in our city, in our region, including in the downtown, I think most significantly in the downtown and in our other urban centers. And the issue of parking it's not new. I describe this as an economic development challenge. I have, Commissioner McKinley, worked closely with the city. I work with them every day. There are parking resources that are being managed to the best of the city's ability. The county has 2,800 publicly owned spaces in downtown. This is a tremendous public resource. The folks coming to work at the businesses in downtown West Palm Beach are coming from all over the county. They're your constituents as well. So this is a win-win situation. What allowing employees to park on county-owned property does is, A, it helps your workforce, and they are your workforce as much as they are ours, and B, it frees up additional spaces for folks coming to patronize those businesses. Yes, there's space in the Banyan Garage, but a big chunk of it is taken up by people who are working right in the entertainment district. Right now in downtown, there's about 30,000 jobs. A big chunk of those are in the hospitality and restaurant industry. I think the Clematis Corps alone, there's well over 1,000 hospitality employees. A business like Rocco's Tacos employs about 80 people across all shifts on all days. So that's like 3/4 of a floor of the Banyan Garage. So we can slice and dice the parking supply in downtown all we want, but this is an economic development opportunity, and it's an opportunity to accommodate your workforce and make their lives easier. I strongly encourage your support.
And Raphael, how many parking spots has the city dedicated to you to meet the needs of the employees in the downtown area?
Commissioner, they're not dedicated to me. They're dedicated to the public. And if you're an employee or a patron, or you're coming to work in your office downtown, they don't restrict access.
You are going to sign a lease with us potentially for a certain number of parking spots. How many parking spots are you asking us for?
As many as you'll allow.
Okay, so say it's 500. How many has the city dedicated to you for the same use?
As many, they are, all the spaces they have, every space in their parking supply, aside from those restricted in the police garage and I think a few in the City Hall garage, are available to the public.
Okay, but you're asking for half-price parking passes, so a discounted parking rate as well. How much has the city done for you?
I've suggested, so the city allows employees at hospitality businesses that are verified employees in downtown hospitality businesses to get a monthly parking pass for $50. I suggested that as a way to manage this program. If that's what's decided upon, fantastic. But that's what the city allows off of their $100 or so monthly parking pass rate for anyone that has a parking pass in a city-owned garage.
Okay, and you would know the private businesses better than I would, since you're head of the DDA. How many private businesses have set aside parking in their new parking structures for their employees?
Well, if you're a Duffy's or a Pistache or a Bradley's, you don't have any parking, or you have very little parking. Or if you're the Ben Hotel, for example, and you have a very large staff, most of the spaces in their facility are for their guests. So employee parking is a challenge no matter where you go in any busy urban district. And the business owners always want their employees to park in a place that allows the most convenient spaces to be available to their customers. That's sort of like, that's inviting the customer to have the most convenient experience versus having the employee have the most convenient experience.
I know, I'm just frustrated. I'm just frustrated because for the last almost 8 years that I've been sitting up here, the city has been coming after the county on a mobility plan. They've been reducing their parking. They've been reducing the number of road lanes that come in and out of the city, all in the name of making this a walkable city, less cars. And I have been saying, 80% of the workforce that's coming into this city is coming from areas outside of the city, me being one of them. And my constituents that are coming in from Wellington and from Loxahatchee and Royal Palm Beach that come into the city, and the difficult time they have getting through all of the construction, getting through the reduced lanes, finding parking that's no longer available because it's been eliminated. And the constant feedback, well, we want to be a walkable city. We want less cars in our city. And here you are standing before us today saying, we need to find more parking for the employees that are coming in from areas outside the city. And I mean, and you've got other municipalities that are suing us for part of the impact fee to make it a mobility fee because you want to make the cities more bikeable, more walkable, and less cars. And so you're talking out of both sides of your mouth, and I'm frustrated. And I want you to go to the city and ask them for that dedicated parking, get them to give you a committed number of parking spots, and then come to us and say, this is what we still need. And that hasn't happened yet. Until that happens, I'm not comfortable moving this item forward today, and I will be a no vote.
Commissioner, may I respond?
Of
May I?
course.
So right now, about 25 or 28% of people that work in downtown West Palm Beach arrive at their location without the use of their private vehicle. That number is going up and up every year. It used to be about 12%. So yes, the move toward a more walkable, more transit accessible place is definitely working. That is the market demand. That's what's driving investment in our city. That's why businesses like Goldman Sachs and Bank Atlantic have invested in downtown West Palm Beach. I have heard them say directly that we love the fact that this is a walkable, multimodal, accessible place. However, we are always going to have the challenge of accommodating vehicles. The county has a tremendous publicly owned parking supply that should be, in my opinion, included in the publicly available parking in the entire downtown district. In a best case scenario, that would be the best case in how to manage public parking in an urban district, is to put it into the pool of all available parking. You could maximize revenue for the county, and you could maximize the existing facilities without having to build more. Parking is the lowest productive use that you can put anywhere in an urban place. Hence the push to build less parking and have more options. Right now, we're still evolving as a region to become more transit friendly, to give people better options other than just their single occupant vehicle. So yes, today we have to solve a parking problem because we have tremendous growth, and this is a perfect opportunity. Tomorrow, can we move the needle to move more people without their cars? Absolutely, and I'm confident that we will do that. But today, we have an opportunity to fix a problem.
Well, you have an issue because your hospitality workers will never be able to afford to live in downtown West Palm Beach anymore.
This is true.
And so all of the development that has been approved has pushed those wage earners out of this area, and now you've got a parking problem because the employees that you need can't afford to live down here.
This is true.
Before I recognize our county administrator, I'm going to say that your investment, Mr. Clemente, in the circulators with the circuit and the increased usage of that obviously points to going in the right direction. And certainly as a proponent of walkability, a proponent of taking our urban core and making it something that you don't need your car in, I applaud. But I think that, back to the original conversation that staff was presenting to us, obviously you're not I think it's evident that the planning did not take into account maybe this spurt of growth that West Palm Beach is enjoying. But, yes, we have availability, and I think that there is an inclination to help out, but certainly you shouldn't be depending on that for a long-term solution to your problems. County Administrator?
Thank you, Mayor.
I think part of our challenge today does go back in history, and no one wants to hear that. I understand and appreciate it. However, this staff, because I was a part of it and participated in the charrettes that the city had to talk about this. I have my own planning division, and we need to, as I always tell them, yes, we need to plan for the future, but we also have to have some realistic expectations, and we need to set those goals. One of the things that the city, part of the plan that justified reducing lanes, eliminating parking, et cetera, also dealt with their circular going around, a park and ride. And so I have not seen the park and ride, which would also help alleviate some of the issues we're dealing with. And so I have no problem. A part of our parking lot is public. That will help our neighbors around, including St. Anne's and others, and then work with the DDA on theirs. However, we don't have a whole lot of other parking space. We still have employees come in, they work late, they come when we get back to full capacity, and we're permitting we permit community groups to come in and use this building. We're going to run into the challenge of the public parking. And so this is complicated. I hear the board loud and clear that you want to work and allow for that, but I think it is also part of our responsibility to lay out the challenges that we're going to face, and because when we're satisfying one group, you're going to hear from another group. And I think we would be short-sighted as far as your staff is concerned if we didn't bring up these issues. I would like for Mr. Clemente to talk to us about their circular, their park and ride, and how we can eliminate the need for additional parking in downtown. Eric was exactly right, and we've been saying this for decades. Do not depend on the county's facilities. They built the plan around depending on the county facilities. And so we will need to address this issue in downtown West Palm Beach and in other areas as well.
I'm assuming you're talking about an offline meeting, not to have this discussion now. Yeah, okay. Commissioner Sachs, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm bringing fresh eyes to this issue. I didn't sit on this board many years ago, but I'm sitting on it now. And parking to me is a big deal. Also a big deal is that when a member of the public finds parking, they don't know if it's federal, state, county, or city. They just want to be able to put their coins in that parking meter and know they can go to the store or they can have something to eat. Our people pay taxes to government. We are government. We shouldn't be fussing amongst ourselves as to whose city and whose county unless there's a compelling financial reason to tell people, no, you can't park in a county spot because you're going to a city facility. We're government. We got to provide adequate and safe parking for all the people who want to come and enjoy our beautiful facilities. And you want to stop business, you impact parking, people won't come again. This is an issue, and thank you, Ms. Baker, for bringing up the history. This is an issue that we're going to be facing in my district, which is all county. And the people in my district, you talk about construction, Commissioner McKinley, you ought to come and drive around District 5 to see what impacts road construction, county construction, which we need, on the traffic going back and forth, trying to enjoy our facilities. So this is a very good issue that we need to address as government. Number one, government must provide parking for all its people. And number two, that parking has to be safe, has to be available, has to be reasonably priced. And number three, we got to start thinking about live, work, and play instead of this urban sprawl that has been known since the 1950s as suburbia. It's over in this county. And I get very passionate when I think about what's going on and what could happen in our western communities as we build more and more housing, less and less highways, and forget about parking. Because we're just going to be driving forever in this area. And we got to stop it. Because obviously this was an issue that occurred years ago before I sat on this board. But I'll tell you right now, when it comes to parking, people pay taxes, they demand and they deserve parking, period.
Thank you,
I never saw a
Commissioner.
person that came out and said, oh, I don't want to park in a county place or a city place. Excuse me, Mayor, but this is the good discussion that we're having, because this is an issue that's going to be coming up for all of our districts, especially mine, since it's all county. So whatever we need to do, and I agree with the arguments of my colleagues, the Vice Mayor and Commissioner Bernard, when it comes to facilitating parking for all the people in Palm Beach County. Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like, this issue is just, it's getting me, like, we're going to history about what happened in the 1970s. Like, I don't really give a care about what happened in the 70s. You know, I'm a commissioner right now, and I'm trying to address issues for my constituents right now in the city of West Palm Beach. Yes, there's going to be a building in 2040, but I'm not going to be here in 2040. I'm trying to address issues for my constituents right now, so I really don't care what you're going to do in 2040. I want to make sure that we can address this issue right now. If it's not available when we're developing and building it, then it's not going to be available. But why can't we try to make it happen, to make a deal work? These are the taxpayers' dollars. All of the county residents built this. It's not just county money and it's the county, it's the taxpayers' money.
Okay. All right, we have about 3 more minutes until my self-imposed deadline before we go to lunch.
So
We want to try and tie up request number 2.
that was going to be my suggestion. Number 3, actually,
Kenley, I see your lights on. Do you want to come back?
No, because the last one is a moot point. The bond issues that we have prevent us from being able to do that one, so I think that one can be disposed of pretty quickly. But I think today that we just need to handle the South County Administration Center issue, and I think that we need to give back to staff the downtown parking issue. We need to go sit down and have a conversation with the DDA and the City of West Palm Beach and the business community on how to work together to handle that parking issue. I think they're separate. I think we should take them one at a time. And so that's how I think we should proceed moving forward. I don't think anyone is up here saying that they're adamantly opposed. I think that we just need to have a group conversation on that, and I'll figure out a way to work together. I think the DDA threw this at us because they saw the South County Administration Center. It hasn't been well thought out. It needs more time to cook. I'm not ready to make that decision today. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm asking you to take the 2 issues separately.
Okay. Vice Mayor, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, and in all deference to my colleague, I think it's abundantly clear there's an issue in West Palm Beach, and I think we can give direction to staff to go ahead and move forward, and whether they end up having to do a 90-day plan until they can do whatever they need to do with the DDA. But I think we can move forward with both these items today. And I appreciate the eloquence of my colleagues in understanding that these are public properties that are not being utilized, that can be used to help with a situation both here and in South County. These are our taxpayers, our residents, our businesses that we all depend on, and I'd like to see us move forward with those. I agree with you on the item with the bond, that opens up a whole nother issue, and table, if there's an opportunity at some point to look at that in the future, but for now, to move forward with these two items, and I think in addition, the item that you're recommending that we move forward for on the Park Place, and that we just move forward with all of them. So I'll make a motion that we move forward with the three of them.
Commissioner McKinley?
I do want to just bring up one point, Mr. Vice Mayor. Some of these parking spots are for some of our employees that require the highest level of security. These are our judges, these are our prosecutors, these are our bailiffs that are going in and working in the judicial complex.
No, this is for parking, this is on the 4th Street parking lot on the outside.
I agree, but it's
It's
going to open up a further conversation, and I do think that we need to bring in the judicial operations and get their opinion.
No, these are public spots that are available right now.
All right, I
It's a
don't think
surface
that we're going to
parking lot.
finish this.
That's what I mean. This is a big can of worms.
Let's put a timeout. We'll come back at 1 o'clock, and we're going to continue this conversation. I don't think we're ready to make any decisions yet. All right, I remind my colleagues there's a bus waiting for us downstairs, not to take us away, but just to take the picture, and we will be back at 1 o'clock. We are in recess.